Hi, everyone. This is Lauren Spagnolo, and welcome to another segment of Tea and Chocolate. Today, I have two founders, I believe, of a group of women, and we're going to learn more, named Talia and Revi, and they represent the Canadian Women Against Anti-Semitism. This is it, Canadian Women Against Anti-Semitism, and I'm absolutely honored and grateful to have both ladies with me today. And the topic, of course, is anti-Semitism, and perhaps it will segue into, slightly other areas. And it's an opportunity for us to learn and to understand what's going on in the world. And so, for me, this is a kind of like, you know what, I could say it's a historical moment in my life.
Oh, that's sweet.
It is, it's been incredibly historical just to view everything. So, whoever would like to start, tell me what this organization is all about and how it started.
So just after October 7th, a friend of mine and I were on the phone. Her name's Esther, and we were talking about how we were going to react to October 7th and how we were going to support our community. We were hurt, we were angry, we were devastated, and we understood that our trauma was being reflected in the community as well, and we needed to find a way to support women in our community. And so soon after, Esther gathered a group of women, and Canadian Women Against Anti-Semitism was born. And it was born to support Jewish women. That was our original sort of impetus to start the organization. And we had a really big rally at Queen's Park in Toronto with something like 3,500 people. And we really tried to gear ourselves to supporting women. And then as time rolled forward, we realized that we needed to start doing more to move the needle. And then Talia, who has a history of working within government and doing advocacy, came in and started working with me on the advocacy leg of things. And that's when we started engaging with government, engaging with all types of officials to really try to move the needle through legislation and through basically any way that we could. Talia, you want to take over?
Yeah, I think, with the very first rally, we were really responding to what was happening on the streets. So, if you remember, after October 7th, the very next day, October 8th, before Israel had even considered how it was going to retaliate for the massacre on October 7th, there were already protests happening on the streets against Israel.
Yeah.
Even though all that had occurred so far in this particular conflict was that the Hamas terrorists had gone into Israel and massacred and kidnapped people. And so really we were born out of that, out of what was happening on the street. And when we held our first rally in Queen's Park, at that point, we were still laboring under this, I guess, naive thought that if we take to the streets and we take to the streets with love and compassion and really historical accuracy, that the country would respond and that the government would respond and that we would find our allies in the government, and obviously this would be over very quickly. We did not expect to find, and I'm going to say, the apathy, the ignorance, and the really the commitment to the status quo that we found, amongst the majority, the silent majority, and also in the government. I think we were also very shocked to see how almost powerless law enforcement was in dealing with what was going on in the streets of Toronto. And that's really how we decided, or certainly why I decided, that we needed to become a much more advocacy-oriented organization, as opposed to, in conjunction with the grassroots support for women that was really our founding.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'm going to say a few things, and then if you could comment on it. So one of the things as an say I'll call myself as an outsider looking in and sort of new to anti-Semitism because I actually didn't realize how deeply embedded or how like anti-Semitism is. And to me, that's actually quite shocking. And for you, it might not be.
Well,
It's just based on plain, like, I don't understand it. Like, I just
So
don't understand it.
so
I would
I'll,
say
I'll
that
say this. Oh, sorry, Revi.
that's okay.
I'll say this. We were also shocked. I mean, I would love to say, oh, we saw this coming. Oh, we knew
Yeah,
exactly
right.
what was going on. No, we were asleep. We were asleep. The Jewish community, and I mean, I'll speak for all of them, uh, for the majority of them anyway, we were asleep at the wheel. Because we had become very comfortable and very complacent here in Canada. And we did not realize just how deep the rot had gotten, and I'm going to call out specifically in the universities and in the school boards, because that's really the heart of the matter. And
Mhm.
all of that rot has also, we didn't realize how far it was in the medical community. We didn't realize how far it was in the faculties, in the unions. We had really been asleep at the wheel, and October 8th was a big wake up call for our community.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think it really tied our community together in many ways. Like Talia has quite a bit of experience over years of working with B'nai B'rith and other organizations. So she, I think, was definitely more embedded in understanding what was going on than people like myself. I was completely out. I'm not a religious person. I had no affiliation with any organization before October 7th, completely just running my own life and, being a decent Jew, but not, super Jewish. And and I think that there were a lot of people like me, a lot of people that were just going about their daily lives and maybe, more religious, less religious, kosher, not kosher, however they were leading their lives, but they didn't they didn't see it and they didn't feel it. I've had very, very minimal experiences with anti-Semitism outside of my university days. And those were many, many years ago. And so I think the community woke up and suddenly everyone was asking, what can I do? What can I do? How are we going to stop this? And I think we kind of expected it to end. We expected, a few months of this, 6 months maybe, the war and the hostages will come home. Everybody in Canada will start to understand that this is not,
Mhm.
how we want to move forward as a country. These are not Canadian values. And then it didn't end, and it just got worse. And as we worked within government and as we tried to work with police and with local, even our mayor, we understood that the support was so lacking that we really had to step up and we had to gather our community and activate our community to step up because it's not one organization or a group of 10 women that can do the work. We need everyone to do the work. And
Mhm.
our allies are super important as well because, there's something like 350,000 Jews in Canada. That's not enough. So our allies truly help push us forward. They support us and they speak out for us. And we really need that. We need a lot of that.
I thought the university responses were shocking, even from a place of compassion and empathy, like on October the 8th, right? I
Yeah.
remember saying to a friend, I said, like, have you like paid attention lately? Have you seen what's happened on October 7th? Yeah, it's colonizing. And I'm like, okay, let me dig a little bit deeper. And to me, immediately I thought, what kind of response is that to a group of people who've just been massacred? And so to me, I'm thinking, what are we actually creating in our world that these university students have that they think that they can just wake up one day and say, yeah, I'm just going to go to the whatever and start knocking some crap around. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
But it's been
even from
embedded.
that perspective,
I don't, I
from
don't,
an
Embedded for 30 years. There's
but
yeah,
an
I
been
don't want to
intent,
sound like a conspiracy theorist,
I,
but
you're
but
not because you
they were planning this well in advance,
Yeah,
well in advance. And
this has been 30 years in the making.
yeah,
So students have been
Oh,
going to school and they've been learning this for decades. And the response on October 7th, there's been evidence that there were student groups here that knew what was about to happen and were ready to activate immediately with propaganda, with gathering of students to start encampment. All of that stuff was pre-planned,
Yeah. And
and we
I
weren't
know
ready for it.
it sounds like crazy conspiracy theory, but we also know where the money was coming from. The money was coming, directly from Qatar to fund a lot of these encampments. We know that the propaganda was coming directly from organizations like Hezbollah through terrorist organizations like Sami Dune.
And
It was an
yeah.
absolutely coordinated attack. But at the same time, this ethos of has also been infiltrating into the unions, into this faculty through the EDI campaigns or the DEI,
DEI.
whichever one.
Yeah.
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 Whichever, through the equity, diversity, and inclusive campaign
Mm-hmm.
policies. So there was an absolutely fertile ground to plant and to grow this far more overt anti-Semitism because it was already there. The seeds were there.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. That's what I've been conscious of for the past few years is how we've been dealing with these hot topics. How they're telling us how to think. I mean, Douglas Murray, to me, he's the epitome of amazing.
Yeah.
He has brought all these things to the forefront, but to look at these things in a different perspective. So I've always been sort of, I guess, awake to that idea about like BLM, Me Too and all this. And I thought, this to me is an absolute fallacy. It's absolute bullshit. And to me, this has just been an extension of that. You see, because the thought process is there already. Do you know what I mean? And in lieu of
Yeah.
what Talia is saying. And this
So
is just makes me angry.
When you
I
hear
think the
about
genius.
all of these, sorry,
Sorry.
when you hear about all of the women that were raped, right, in
Oh,
Israel,
yeah, right.
all the travesty of what happened to women on October 7th, and that all these women organizations across the world ignored it. No one said a word.
I know.
And it's not because they didn't know about it, it's because they were Jewish women. That's the only answer.
There's
And
a
so,
tremendous
go
But
ahead.
but
there's a
why?
tremendous
When
amount of
why are these organizations not saying anything?
so there's a tremendous amount of intolerance built into the ideology of the left, right?
Yes,
So
yes,
and it is very much an ideology. And
yes.
if you cannot swallow as an ideologue the entire ideology, there's a huge amount of intolerance. Okay, so and it does disservice to every single one of the groups that they purport to represent, right?
Agreed,
So it does
agreed.
disservice to the BLM movement,
Yeah,
does disservice to trans rights, it does disservice and definitely to the Jews, definitely to the Palestinians,
yeah,
definitely to the LGBTQ community, because you have to swallow the entire ideology. And if you do not swallow the entire ideology, then you are left out. And
And you
you
have
are
to fit into the narrative,
right.
right? Jews
So,
do not fit into the narrative of the oppressed.
mhm.
We've become the oppressor. That's the narrative. We
Right.
are, quote, white. We tend to be successful. Our kids go to school, they go to university. That's our culture. And the culture has then become labeled as the oppressor. And, and groups that are standing up for the oppressed are not suddenly going to be screaming for help for the oppressor.
right.
And that is the big downfall of the EDI or DEI, whatever you want to
And
call it.
there's no room to hold these thoughts in your heads at the same time, right? So you can't be like, well, I'm against anti-Semitism and this particular brand of racism, and
Yes.
I can still want rights for the Palestinian people, right? You can't hold those two thoughts in your head at one
According
time.
to that left. Yeah.
Right, according to this left-wing ideology, which
Yes.
is where and this is where the real anti-Semitism here in Canada comes in.
Okay.
And this is where many members of the Jewish community, certainly Revi and I included, have lost friends and lost allies because, you know, uh, as much as like we marched for the Black Lives Matter movement, I have certainly been to many pride rallies. I consider myself a huge ally of the LGBTQ community. Um, you know, trans rights are important to me. All of this stuff. However, the minute I stand up for anti-Semitism, I can no longer be part of that group, and now and we've lost a lot of friends.
Yeah, we've been abandoned. You
Which
know,
is kind of
we
cuckoo bananas if you
we
stop and think about it.
we raised our children to truly believe in rights for everybody and that everybody is equal. And my kids during COVID came to me and said, you know, we heard that people are racist against Black people. What can we do? And they made signs on, you know, and they walked around from house to house and they asked people to put these lawn signs out that said, you know, no racism and we all belong together and things like that. And so, you know, when you're actively standing up for communities that have gone through oppression, that have gone through genocides themselves, that have whatever, you know, to support them and to elevate them, whatever the community that required it. And then suddenly this, like in this split second, something horrible happens and you need support and it doesn't exist.
Right. It's gone.
It's gone.
Where
And
are
it's heartbreaking.
it is heartbreaking. Where are they in their psyche then? Like, that's the
They're
question I have.
Well,
they're the
so
oppressors.
the problem
No,
is,
but why are they like to me, it's like I don't understand how you can't, as human beings, hold things together. You should be able to walk alongside each other. Why can't people do that?
so because of this very concerted attack and coordinated attack, the
Yeah,
Hamas side of the Palestinian narrative is the one that holds sway,
sure.
right? Because
I've
I
seen
think
that.
They
Yeah,
feel
we
like
can
the underdog.
that
right,
like
right.
the best hope for the Palestinian people would be to get out from under the thumb of Hamas. And the only way that's going to happen is if the IDF can absolutely demolish Hamas. And you certainly see a lot of protest in Gaza itself against Hamas and wanting to free the Palestinian people from Hamas. However, in this left wing, in this EDI oppressed oppressor narrative binary that we have here in Canada, it's the Hamas side of the narrative that has taken hold,
And
not the
propaganda
actual
has a lot to do with it.
not the actual Palestinian side of the narrative, but the Hamas side, where the Palestinian people are are purported to be under the thumb of a different regime. And it's not accurate. It is an absolute fallacy. And it's a fallacy of history. It's a fallacy of reality. But that is what has taken hold of this left-wing movement here in Canada, which is really the forefront and really the reason behind the anti-Semitism here in
Right.
Canada.
And it
And
does
it
tie
all feeds into
into
to
each
each other,
other. Yeah.
right?
And so the politics and the media somehow go hand in hand together, does it not?
Well,
Like you're not going to bite the hand that
when you're
feeds them.
looking at the media, and the media in Canada is so one-sided.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so I'm going to say anti-Semitic and anti-Israel, anti-Zionist.
I mean,
And
unless
I
you're the
would agree.
National
such a
Post or the
massive
Sun,
degree.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's so many Canadians that are not tuned into what happened. There are Canadians that don't even know about October 7th
I
because
know.
they're not Jewish. They're not Jewish allies. They have their own lives going on. They have no idea about it. And when they do hear about it, they're hearing about it from the CBC. They're hearing about it from whatever their algorithm is
Yeah.
providing them
Yeah.
with. And they're hearing a completely one-sided narrative that is filled with lies, and they instantly believe it. There are Jewish people that don't understand what is going on. So when you're looking at it as a whole, there's many active Jews and many active allies that really understand what happened, that understand the Jewish indigeneity to Israel, that understand the difference between what Israel is doing and what Hamas did, that have seen video footage of the atrocities, that have looked and informed themselves about the situation over there. But there is a greater amount of people that haven't, that have swallowed up what the CBC has fed them and haven't taken the time to truly understand the situation and the history of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this, I don't want to call it ignorance. I feel like it's a lack of information, that people have a lack of information. And when you take that and then what's been going on in the teachings in the universities and
Yes.
you mash that together, you have a whole lot of people that see and view Israel and the Jews as the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you walk into that world of that very self-righteous virtue signaling,
Yeah.
right? Which is how you end up where we are now in a world where they just handed the Pulitzer Prize to an author who denies that October 7th ever
Oh,
happened,
I
that
know.
no women were raped, that this is just a fabrication of the Jews, right? In order to, I mean, and that's the world that we live in now. And right, this is what's being applauded, and this is where the virtue signaling is, because this is the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Israel
And
recently put out uh, they did some research, and in their research, they found that Canada is the number one most anti-Semitic country in the West.
I
And we have to look at our government. Our
yeah,
government,
yeah,
over the last 10 years has gone so fully to the left that
yeah,
they've instilled that narrative in our country. They've fed into that machine.
yeah.
Right? And it's
Purposely.
very hard to pull them back. It's very hard
Yeah,
to get people back to the center.
yeah. I'm on the West Coast, and of course, my reality here is a little bit different. Not to say that I don't also notice the anti-Semitism and the whole. It's a big DEI province. It's extremely lonely, actually,
Oh,
and
I'm sorry to hear that.
it really is because you try and have a discussion about this and all the topics that Talia was saying about, how we're compassionate to all groups of people, but I also draw lines in reality with certain things, right? And we should be able to do that. I too have lost a friend just because I kept posting about the hostages and all the rest of it. And it's like, we have to pay attention with what's going on. We're not separate from that. We're included in that. This is something that's really important that we need to be awake to. Um,
Well,
now,
that's why the work that you do is so important, right? Because it's one thing for us to be advocating on behalf of the Jews. Obviously, we're going to do that. We're Jews. We're
yeah,
advocating on behalf of ourselves.
yeah,
For our allies to advocate is fantastic, especially and so important, especially because you run a much harder gauntlet than we do,
And
I
you
right?
think
also
so.
reach more people,
So,
or
100%.
different people than we do, right? We're very insulated in our community. So we'll post something or we'll push something out, and unless someone's algorithm is sending it to them, they're not seeing it. So when allies are standing up for us and posting about us and sharing the content and really getting the message out there, then you're getting Canadians that would normally see what we're doing, and
Right.
they get it. It shows up in their feed. It shows up in their news.
Have you
Yes.
both been to Israel?
I was born in Israel, and Talia
Yes,
lived.
I lived there. Yeah.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about the people?
Oh, it's
I know
amazing.
that I'm speaking to tourists.
It's a party. Listen, everyone in
No.
Israel, they live under a different circumstance than we do, right? When you're
Yeah.
living with the threat of countries all around you that want to annihilate you, you get a little hardened, right? They're like the hard crops
All
that
right.
don't get. And so there is this constant feeling of needing to truly live life to its fullest. And they really do. They're not lazy. They will get up and they will go do what they need to do to fight for their country,
Yeah.
but they will also live life with pure joy. And I've never seen a people that can do it, and I've traveled extensively in this world. people that are consistently under threat have this unique ability to live their lives daily as if it's their last day. Like, people say that
Yeah.
live like it's, like you don't have much more time, like just live. And they really do. And they celebrate together, and all
That's
religions and
incredible.
all cultures and all people are together. You walk down the street and everybody is there. Everybody is all mixed in, and they're all Israeli, and they're very proud of their nation. And you don't
Yeah.
have to be a Jew to be that way in a country that has that much freedom. They have
You
what
know
one
what?
of
You
the
should
biggest gay
you should
prides in
go
the world.
to, well, yeah. First of all, yes, Tel Aviv has the third largest pride parade in the world.
Yeah,
Number one.
Really?
it's
Yes,
incredible. Yeah.
amazing. I used to live in the neighborhood in Florentine in Tel Aviv. Um, Go check out Warren Kinsella's Twitter feed because he came back from Israel yesterday. And Warren Kinsella, the journalist, and he has wonderful, beautiful things to say about the people of Israel. I actually have a dear friend who's also Catholic who's traveling to Israel with her husband next week, and I am so excited to hear about how their trip is. And I will certainly ask them offline if they'd be willing to talk to you. Because I suspect that they're also going to discover just the richness, the diversity, the just lust for life that there
Yeah.
is in Israel, because it's there's such a greater appreciation for just the blessing of life.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the community, that sense of community. Here a child might fall down in a park and scrape their knee, and their mother will run to them, right? In Israel, a child falls down and scrapes their knee, and every mother runs to them. Everyone,
Hmm.
because they really feel like it's a massive family. And it's like I said before, it's not just the Jewish women that will run to save that child or to see if that child's okay. It'll be a Muslim woman and a Christian woman and a Baha'i woman. And they function as a giant organism and as a huge family. So they'll scream at each other in 1 minute, and then the next minute, they're on the beach hanging out, having a good time. And it's really that sense of community, I think, that is outstanding. I've never seen it anywhere else.
I think a really good way to a way to really illustrate how Israel feels about its people and how the people feel like a sense of community is if you look at the way Israel rescues, the way Israel rescued its Ethiopian community when they were under threat.
Hmm.
And, in the space of 2 days,
Yeah.
airlifted the Ethiopian community out of Ethiopia and into Israel.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
way the raid on
In
Entebbe,
Amsterdam, in the
for
Amsterdam
example,
riots, right
the
away.
Amsterdam rally.
Yeah.
That's right. Or take a look, and they're not, look at how Israel is dealing with the Druze community in Syria at
Yes.
the moment,
That
who
too.
are not Jewish, but because, we have a big Druze population in Israel, they're a wonderful, vital, dynamic part of the Israeli population. Israel feels an obligation to go in and save the Druze in Syria
Yeah.
and to do it militarily. And it's not like Israel is not, doesn't have a few conflicts going on
They're
in a few
busy.
other fronts. We might as well go to Syria now. But
Yeah.
because we have that commitment to saving lives and to saving the lives, not even of our own people.
Human
Yes.
life is
Right.
is
I mean, Israel is the Israeli army is one of the only armies accredited by the United Nations for its mobile surgery. So, for example, when there is a natural disaster in the
Oh my
world,
God.
like the
Yeah.
earthquakes in Haiti or hurricanes or tsunamis, Israel is one of the very first countries to go in. It has an accredited mobile surgery. So Israel does the most complex surgeries and life-saving surgeries. Israel is also one of the only countries that has a mobile maternity wing. So when Israel goes into some of these natural disasters, like in Haiti or in Japan with the tsunamis, etc., Israel is where the pregnant women go to give birth because Israel has a mobile maternity wing. I mean, people don't know this
Yeah, I know.
about the.
I know.
This is,
Yeah.
and
I
I
mean,
think it's
Yeah.
it's greatly informed by, Judaism, and
who we are.
Judaism, because it's a Jewish country, it's
Mhm.
informed by Jewish
The
value,
sanctity of life. The
right?
sanctity
And
of
this,
life
yeah,
is
every
paramount.
human life matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You know,
and I guess it's every human life is like a light, and they don't want that light to be extinguished,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And
and
so
I mean,
every hostage matters.
Mm-hmm.
Every human life on earth matters to the Jews, and that's why Israel will go and help anyone during a natural disaster. They went to Turkey. Turkey's not in love with Israel, but they
Yeah.
went to Turkey and
Yeah.
they helped. And so they put aside all of the political
Yeah.
all the politics,
Outside.
and they
Yeah.
will go and they will help anybody, and that is because every human life matters. And if people truly understood that, they would understand that when Israel is going into Gaza, they are trying to do so in a way that minimizes civilian casualties, and people don't seem to understand that that is the Jewish way and that is the Israeli way. And they are 100% informed by that in everything that they do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It
right, and
seems like also,
That's why Israel's been the conduit for humanitarian aid into Gaza. I mean, could you imagine during the Second World War if Britain was responsible for the humanitarian aid to Germany? We would have thought that was insane. But
yeah,
here we are, where
right.
Israel is responsible for the humanitarian aid to Gaza and does it.
What do
Absolutely.
you say to people I've seen on the internet, like give aid to Gaza? What is that? You know, because the narrative is that the Israel is stopping aid to get into Gaza, and
So
that's
that's
not part of
really
all the
not
propaganda.
true.
Yeah,
Actually, I can't remember his name, but I'll try to remember it. There was a video posted just today about a market in Gaza, a
I
thriving
saw
market,
that. I
right?
saw it. Yeah,
And so
yeah,
how is there a thriving market in Gaza if there's no food going in? Where's all that food coming from?
hmm
So it's a propaganda machine. The propaganda machine is telling people it's lying. It's lying to the world.
hmm
And people are believing it because they're not seeing the truth. And it's very hard. We're very bad. We are very, very bad at propaganda. Israel and Jews are terrible at it. We just have other things to do, right? So that has not been a focus. And the problem is that the other side is a machine. They are propaganda and they were ready. And so it's very
It's
hard
because
to
it's also
counter
because
that
all they
narrative.
have is propaganda. That's all they have.
yes,
That's what they have,
yeah,
right? They don't have truth.
But they're
They don't
so
have
good at it.
history. They don't have history. They don't have a legitimate narrative. All they have is propaganda. And so all of their resources, all of that money, all of that machinery has got to be put toward the propaganda, because the minute that machinery falls down and the propaganda ceases, maybe we'll have an opportunity to actually scratch beneath the surface and show how false the narrative really is,
Yeah.
and how
The veil might
much
lift.
managed to pull the wool over everybody's eyes.
hmm
Right,
Why?
and it begins at the concept of that colonial settler
I know.
indigenous
Yeah.
versus indigenous narrative, right? Who
hmm
is indigenous to the land of Israel?
Yeah.
And
What?
that's the heart of the matter. And I mean, obviously, we've got 3,000 years of unbroken Jewish narrative in the land of Israel for 3,000 years,
Yeah.
and there haven't been any gaps. It's not like we've missed some spots, or we don't actually know where that narrative started. We absolutely have the origin story. The Jews are 100% indigenous to the land of Israel, because the question can always be asked, well, where else would we have come from
Yeah. Yeah.
if not the land of Israel?
But so earlier you were saying, I'd like to just to touch on the anti-Semite pieces in our medical community. We've touched on the university, but even an organization like Nike.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I
Um,
think they're just,
Oh,
I think
with their never again thing.
they didn't even
yeah,
think about it.
Yeah,
So
it is
we
pure
actually
ignorance.
posted about it, and somebody said to me, you know, I run these. I'm an ally, and I'm definitely, helping fight against anti-Semitism. But I can tell you that when people run, at the end of the run, they will, like marathons, they will often say, "Oh, never again. I'm never doing this again."
I
And so
never
the
said
belief
that.
is that Nike did that I don't actually believe that Nike did it as an anti-Semitic statement.
No, I
I
don't think
believe
they
that
did
they
either.
didn't think. I don't think they thought about it. And at this
Well,
point,
thanks for
it's almost like
clarifying that.
everything needs to be fed through a filter so that the understanding of what happened on October 7th and the understanding of what the Jews are experiencing informs advertisements. Like
Yeah.
you can't you put out something like that, somebody along the line must have stopped and looked at it and said, "Hey, wait a minute, this is not a good idea,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, but nobody did, apparently. And so I think it's time for organizations or huge companies like Nike and Adidas and all of these companies start to really sit back and look at what they're doing and put it through a lens of, what does that statement mean, not just to us, but to others, and not just the Jewish community. I'm sure there's lots of advertisements that offend other communities. And, we can't not offend people in general because that's
Yeah, I'm
life.
not a not a
People
big
get offended.
believer in cancel culture, but I am a
But
believer in doing your due diligence when it
yeah,
comes to language.
like,
Yeah,
how did
for sure.
nobody stop and say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is not a good plan"?
Like
Yeah,
just
right.
just Google it. All I'm saying is just
Yeah.
Google it. Just one time. Google it.
Put it
Like
through
I'm not
chat GPT,
yeah, just
Is this a
Google
good
it.
idea?
Yeah.
What
Like could this mean something else? Just Google it.
Yeah.
what do the two of you today
Yeah.
now think of Donald Trump? And if you had any different thoughts of him before,
I think Donald Trump is
Oh,
very
that's a
good
good
for the
question.
Jews and very bad for everybody else right now. That's just,
is that
I
what your
mean,
perspective is?
yeah,
I
I
think
think it's good for the
well,
American
I,
Jews, what
so
he's
I
doing to
only
help them, but the problem
but
is,
I
and
don't
I really feel like he's doing great things for the Jews, but he's putting us in this place that we don't want to be. I feel like when I read articles about him and when I see what he's doing, he's putting us in this oppressor space. And I don't want to be in that oppressor space. And I don't think any Jew really does. And so while he's doing a lot to help us, the opposite of that is actually going to end up happening. I think there's going to be a big backlash.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
so I'm gonna tell you a story. I will illustrate this with a story. And then I'll tell you my opinion of Donald Trump because it's a little bit different than Revi's. Okay, so so the government just pulled a lot of their funding from the universities
Yeah.
because of the anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
So my husband went to Cornell. He did one of his degrees at Cornell.
Wow.
And we just recently got an email from the president of Cornell saying a lot of our funding has been pulled because we refuse to take the stance that the government wants us to take on anti-Semitism. So we're fundraising. So they were eliciting funds from us to protest the anti-Semitism stance of the government, right? So now, let's say I'm not my husband, who's obviously going to respond to the president saying, well, just deal with your anti-Semitism problem and then you'll get your funding back. People are now going to theoretically be giving money to Cornell against being against anti-Semitism. Do you see what I mean? So in order to like entrench the anti-Semitism, to support the anti-Semitism of the
Right.
university, they are raising money. Now, who do you blame for the fact that the university doesn't have money?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
are you blaming the president for not taking a stance on anti-Semitism? Maybe, if you're us. Or are you blaming the Jews for
Yeah.
being so uptight about the anti-Semitism that they're keeping the funds from the university, right? So now you're blaming the Jews
Mhm.
Yeah.
for the fact that Cornell is out $1.2 billion or whatever it is,
Right.
right? So now you blame the Jews. Now we're in the state of we're so uptight about our anti-Semitism that we're keeping the money from the university,
It's
right?
like the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
Right, which obviously
Yeah.
we're not, and certainly I would never want that to happen. But so my opinion of Donald Trump, however, is that I think Donald Trump does what's good for Donald Trump in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think right now it's good for him to support the Jews and to take a hard stance on anti-Semitism because it's creating that sense of law and order in the US that he's trying to do. That's good for Donald Trump because then he looks very much like a law and order, like a bit of a savior,
Yeah.
and like somebody who is in control of his country,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's what he wants to look like.
Okay.
But I think that when it doesn't suit his purpose, it's not going to suit his purpose. And we sort of saw that a little bit with this deal that he's striking in Saudi Arabia, where he essentially is leaving Israel out in the cold on
Yeah.
this arms deal with Saudi Arabia. So it didn't serve his purpose with Saudi Arabia, so he'll just turn his back. And I think the minute we certainly saw it with
It's
Ukraine, right? The minute that you step out of line and you don't kiss the ring, he will turn on you, and he will turn on you in a way that is, brutal and
Dangerous.
for lack of a better word, cuckoo bananas. So I don't trust him at all. And I don't think that we should be putting our eggs in that particular basket.
I'm just afraid of the backlash, personally. I'm really afraid of the backlash.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
a good point.
In the end, it's the opposite of what we actually need.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
about things is very important, and he's a bull in a china shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the focus, with the universities, the focus really shouldn't be on the Jews. The focus should be on bringing the university back to the core competencies of the university, which is to, prepare people for the professions that they are there to study, not to foment political dissent or foment, unrest, et cetera, but really to focus on the core competencies. So if I were trying to fix the universities, I would be focusing on the history faculties. I'd be focusing on the politics faculties. I'd be taking a look at what's being taught in the curriculums. And I would be expecting a level of historical accuracy and rigor that is not being demanded now. And I would be expecting that historical accuracy and scholastic rigor across the board, not just in support of the Jews, but in support of just plain historical accuracy, scholastic rigor. That would, if I was the president of the United States,
maybe you
that's
should.
what I would be doing. Not singling out. Sure, yes, we have big anti-Semitism problem on the campuses, but I think and I think that in this regard, the anti-Semitism is very much the canary in the coal mine. I think that there is a movement away from accuracy and into ideology, right? So whereas the faculty of history is more about what ideology you're supporting as opposed to what actually historically happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if that were really the focus of, the revitalization or the rehabilitation of the universities, that would be my focus, because I think that saves everybody, not just the Jews.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So that will save the Black community. That will say, right, it will help make sure that historical accuracy in the Black community is there. It will help the Arab and Palestinian communities, because at least their narrative will become something that's historically accurate, and they may actually have a shot at their own peoplehood.
Yeah, totally. I often thought about how, if Kamala Harris was the winning president, how she would have handled this. I'm not sure, like if she would have done as good of a job, in spite of all his other stuff that he's got going on about himself. You know what I mean? Like we've got our own prime minister who I don't like, I question that, because I don't know if he would be the appropriate ally. And I don't know, there just doesn't seem to be like the perfect balance.
Well, I mean, if you want to ask the same question about Mark Carney, we can certainly tell you our opinion of Mark.
Yeah, I know. Well, go for it. I mean,
very dangerous.
I know.
Mark Carney scares me. I'll say that. He scares me. I don't know. I don't really feel like his goals are Canadian oriented. I feel like his goals are very internal and narcissistic. That being said, he has the opportunity now. He's just been elected by, half of Canada into his role. And I'm really hoping that he can sort of take a step back and look at the situation and understand that this isn't just about protests in the streets. This is about Jewish rights, Jewish human rights. And our rights are being attacked in the medical institutions. Our rights are being attacked in universities, in primary schools or elementary schools and high schools. There are rape crisis centers that Jewish women can't go to
In
because
Canada?
pro-Palestinian,
Yeah.
propaganda there. So
No
we've
go for
dealt with that here in Toronto, and that's not okay. And that is a human rights issue. We deserve to have equal rights, just like
Agreed.
everyone else.
Agreed.
It doesn't have to make people love us. We don't ever expect that to happen. We're not expecting anti-Semitism to disappear, but we do deserve equal rights and protection under the law. And it's time for him to step back, look at the situation, and figure out ways to help the Jewish community in Canada feel safe in every aspect of their lives. There is no reason a Jewish person should not be able to get the help that they need in this country.
100%.
Yeah, I think with Mark Carney, I actually think that Mark Carney he's very much an economist. He's not a politician at all. I think he has a very surface understanding of politics. And unfortunately, that surface understanding is quite dangerous. So whereas, when he realized that the writing was on the wall for the Liberal Party, as we know, like back in, months before the election, when the Liberals looked like they were going to come in fourth in the election. And, obviously Trudeau stepped down, Mark Carney took over. I think he saw that really the problems facing Canada are very economic, right? We've got a housing crisis, we've got a job crisis, we've got, and when he realized that the Conservatives seemed to be winning on the economy, he switched his economic policy to be very much an echo of the Conservative policy, right? It's very hard to tell the difference.
Yeah.
Right? He pulled back on the carbon tax. He started talking more about natural resources. He very much said, okay, well, if it walks like a conservative and talks like a conservative, it's probably me. But on the politics of things, I think he has a very surface understanding. I don't think he fully understands the complexity. And he looked very much at the demographics in Canada and said, who's going to elect us and who isn't going to elect us.
And the Jews
right?
had been very
we've heard the exact same thing. Example from the foreign minister herself, Melanie Joly, has essentially said, look, I'm going to side with my riding and who's going to demographically vote me in. And I think Mark Carney realized at that point that it's not, the Jews are not we were not voting Liberal in this election. We were absolutely voting Conservative in this election because for the last 18 months, the situation for Canadians, Jews, have gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So Mark Carney has realized that the Jews are not his demographic. We are not voting for him.
And there's not enough of us.
I think surprisingly to us, more Jews did vote Liberal than we were expecting, but nonetheless. So for him, politically, not economically, politically, he's very happy with the status quo because it's what got him elected. It's the reason the Liberals had a surge forward. And I think for him, he doesn't really care. And I think that this is our huge disappointment here in the Jewish community. He doesn't care about us at all. He doesn't know anything about the complexity of the anti-Semitism in Canada. Any comments that he's made has either been out of a can or completely off the cuff.
Oh my gosh.
And the off-the-cuff ones have been extremely damaging and disappointing
Very
to
dangerous.
the Jewish community. And the only one time that he ever actually made a statement about the hostages was when we found out that the Bibas family had been murdered and how they had been murdered. And that is the one and only time that Carney has ever said anything in support of the Jewish community and in support of the hostages, anything to do with Israel that wasn't coming from the other side. So, and I really think that it is because he doesn't care at all.
I also think that we represent something that isn't like Mark Carney is not Mark Carney puts out the image that he is not a capitalist. And Israel is very much socialist in a lot of ways in how they take care of each other, but economically, very capitalist,
Mhm.
very driven by innovation and business. And
Yeah.
Mark Carney isn't into that. And so I think that Israel really just represents something that he doesn't want here.
No.
It's not the model that he's looking at for Canada. But I do think we do have an opportunity. A lot of the Liberal elected MPs are quite frightening to me. They've signed on with the Vote Palestine initiative.
Oh,
There's a lot of them.
yeah.
But there are a few that I think are
Yeah, we
very
have some
good
allies.
allies.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to really work with those allies that are in the Liberal government, because we have to live with the Liberal government regardless for 18 months to 4 years, we'll say. And if we have to do that, then we have to work with them in order to create safety for Jews in Canada. And so I think we're going to need to tap into those MPs that do care about us, that do understand the situation, and that are willing to back us and stand up for us, and hopefully
And they
get some.
do exist. They do exist.
Yeah, they do exist.
And
It is hard because, CWAA really swung conservative before
Yeah.
the election. And so, it's a little bit like we've kind of got to eat it a little bit now.
well, we do and we don't. We do and
But
we don't. Right?
but
We
these
come
are
at this
people
from
that
a
we
bit of a
can work with.
different perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
We
It's
have to work with
not
the government that's in power in order to enact change.
because
So,
look,
and
I've had some very open and honest conversations with my MP, who's a liberal, who I was surprised that he was elected, but I'm not like I certainly campaigned for his opponent very openly and very unapologetically, and I've had some very open conversations with him, and they've been excellent, and I'm actually very impressed.
yeah,
And as much as he understands that, and I told him very specifically all the reasons why I was campaigning for his opponent. He also understands, I think, to some degree, that the Jewish community feels very much abandoned by the Liberal government and by the government in general and by the Liberal Party specifically. And I mean, we don't even need to talk about the NDP, right? They're so far over the left
oh my
cliff
gosh,
that
let's
Yeah.
not give them any airtime.
but like
Yeah.
but they also, I think he's one of the ones who actually understands that his party has to get our trust back as well. Right. So it's not one-sided. It's not that we have to now go to the Liberal government and say, okay, we realize that we campaigned against you. We're gonna have to eat it. We don't. They have to earn our trust back as well.
And they made a
Right.
lot of commitments to us before the election, and we're going to need to hold them accountable.
And what I'm hoping is that whereas in the previous 18 months, any, Liberal MPs who were open and outspoken allies of the Jewish community were very much outliers in the party, right? Specifically, people like Marco Mendicino or Anthony Housefather were very much outliers, and they were in a lot of ways rusticated by their party. And I'm hoping that it is not going to be the case with this particular government, that our allies are not going to be outliers and have to, swim upstream in their own party. And I'm hoping, like with an immigration minister like Rachel Ben-Dayan, who is also a very outspoken ally. And with MPs returning like Julie DeBrusin, I'm hoping that, and with a couple of the new MPs who have shown their allyship, like Leslie Church and
Vince Caspero. Yeah.
Vince Caspero, that, hopefully we will have a good, sizable, outspoken caucus of allies in the Liberal Party, and hopefully we'll be able to find some trust on both sides.
Okay. Now, before I ask you my very last question before you, I want to touch just a little bit on just on the hostages themselves, the ones that are left. Why is there a halt at the moment? Like
So
what's
that's a
holding that
question
back?
for Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't know if we can
Yeah,
answer
I
that.
don't know the answer to
I,
that.
I'm
I think that they're just not
uh,
able to come to terms. I think
that's it.
it's
Yeah.
very difficult to negotiate with terrorists.
Okay. Tell me what you've learned about yourselves throughout this whole process.
Oh my gosh.
I in the
Um,
very beginning, you both had reiterated like your backgrounds, Talia's advocacy and you sort of like kind of going throughout your life, and then all of a sudden, you're, I would say, for lack of a better word, and correct me if I'm wrong, like an awakening. But certainly, both of you are definitely active and passionate about the importance of anti-Semitism and bringing that awareness to people as well. I mean, I also think about emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. I feel that that's missing in our society, like especially at the political level. It's like, okay, well, can we put the politics aside and see what's actually happening here as human beings? So important.
Oh, that, you know what? That's been one of the big disappointments, certainly for me. Like, because you think of Canadian society as being very much a kind, compassionate,
Right,
we rise above, we'll put our personal like pettiness aside for the sake of the greater good. And
right.
it's a big disappointment for me to discover that that's not altogether the case, right? And certainly, I left politics a long time ago for exactly the same reason that it's very ego driven. It's very self interest driven,
Yeah.
and it's been a big disappointment, save for a few, real exceptions, like real mentions. There are a few of them out there, like
Hmm.
really kind, good people who got into politics and into the political sphere for the right motives. There are a few, and it's actually been a real treat and a real it's been heartwarming to meet those people, and I am talking about people like Marco Mendicino and some of the others that we mentioned. And many of the people that we've met in the Conservative Party, and some of the ones that unfortunately were not elected. Like I'll call out someone like Lionel Logan Nathan, which is just an absolute gentle, compassionate, kind human being. It was unfortunate that he did not win his
Yeah.
his seat in
Heartbreaking.
Thornhill.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's been a wonderful part. The sad part is the fact that yes, there is a certain level of mean-spiritedness and ego and self-interest that has infiltrated its way into politics. It's probably always been there since time immemorial,
Yeah.
and that's been a big disappointment uh, to us, certainly. In terms of, I the one thing also that's been kind of heartbreaking is you learn who your friends are. You learn who your real allies are. You learn, certainly among my non-Jewish friends, I know who my real allies are, and I know who are the ones who, you know, are not.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've also made, I didn't know Revi before this, and I have a friend who I will carry through the rest of my life who
Oh,
has brought a huge amount of joy and meaning and
Oh my God.
stress into my life,
fantastic.
right?
Fantastic.
And no, and a lot of the other women. I mean, certainly Revi is like, she's
We
we
talk a
talk
hundred times a day. So
right,
Really.
and,
yeah.
and other members of the team who I can't imagine my life without them, and I've made friends. That's been an absolute joy. And the only thing that has kept us going, because unfortunately, the thing that I also learned about myself is that I don't do apathy well. I have tried to step away and step down so many times. And there are many mornings that I have woken up in the morning, looked at my husband and said, okay, it's time to quit, move to Alora and open a yarn store because I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, but I can't and I won't. And, because there's already an excess of apathy in this world. I mean, Revi's a machine. What keeps her going? I have no idea, other than like adrenaline and stress and caffeine. But we have this incredible sense of responsibility, right? If we don't do this, then nobody's coming to save us.
Right.
Right? Nobody is coming to save the Jewish community. We have wonderful allies, but you guys, as amazing as our allies are, unfortunately, we're few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
And every single one of our allies you guys work so hard and do so much, but you are few and far between. And so,
I agree with that. I think we have more allies than we realize. I really do. And
I'm not talking the silent majority. I'm talking about the ones like Lauren here, like Janice Laforme, like Harry Laforme, like Kristen Berry,
like Heather from Vancouver,
like Heather from Vancouver, like people who really stand up and put themselves out there and spend their lives doing this like we do.
Yeah.
So we have this sense of responsibility that, until I know that my kids will be safe at university, until I know that my kids will even get into university in Canada, because the Jews aren't getting into university in the same numbers that they were in the past.
Oh.
I am responsible. I have to do this. I don't have a choice.
So I feel like I've learned,
and the only thing that makes it worth it are the friendships, because the work is horrible.
I think that for me, I've learned that I never thought that I needed this great big community in my life. And I've learned that I do. I need their support. And by supporting others, by all of the support that we've provided to the women and even many men in our community, and the feedback that we get, the text messages of, hey, I know that you just had a hard day today, because we've been texting in our WhatsApp group, and you're doing a great job, or thank you so much for what you said today. It really meant a lot to me. Or, emails and text messages from people saying, I'm having a really hard day, and and what would you do in this situation? And just that back and forth, and that feeling that we are actually helping others is really what I would call filling my bucket. And I never knew my bucket needed filling, And so this is a really hard job. I cry a lot. I write a lot for our emails and for our postings, and I spend a lot of time researching really ugly, nefarious characters, and it's very heartbreaking, and it's really hard on the soul. And so when I get that feedback from my community that we're helping them, it counteracts that, and it supersedes it. And it makes me feel like whatever it is that we're doing, and all the countless hours we spend working at CWAA on top of our regular lives and our jobs and the rest of the life that still needs to be led, that feedback and that knowledge that we are truly making a difference in the lives of others, even if we're really pushing the needle hard and it's not really moving so quickly, at least I know that the work exists for a reason. And the reason for me that we could help one person feel good today, or one person feel heard, or put out a message that they wish they could have put out, that makes me feel, and I think that that's what I didn't know about myself. Just to go back to your question, I didn't know that I needed my bucket filled by so many people. And I also didn't know how deep my love for Canada was, because, and I've said this before, whenever I sing national anthem, I'm an immigrant, right? And I got my status when I was 5 years old in Canada. And every time I've ever sung the national anthem in my entire life, I've cried. And I don't know why. I think it's just some deep-rooted love for this country. And for the last 18 months, I haven't really cried. And I'm so devastated and let down by my country. Because Canada, I was born in Israel, and Israel is my roots. But Canada's been the place I've lived for over 50 years. And it's my country, and I expected my country to support me. And so, as Talia said, when allies do come out, and we have this woman, Heather from Vancouver, who flew out for our first rally and has been a
Oh,
constant support to us. And she started a an Instagram page and called Jews Are Not Alone. And she's been such a constant support to us. And whenever and I we have allies, from Montreal that are in our chat groups that are consistently working to help us. And every time I see that, Michael Osborne, who started a big organization, all of these people um, that stand up for us bring tears to my eyes. The
mhm.
Hindu community, it has been an incredible support to us. I've made
Fantastic.
amazing Hindu
Yeah,
friends. And so all of that community support in my lifetime, I never thought would be important to me, but it is so crucial to me now. And if this makes it onto your video today, I just want to put a big thank you out to all of the allies that are out there, because without them, I
100%,
think this work would be
100%.
I
impossible.
was going to ask you about the blessings and the light that's come through through this experience for both
And
of
that's
you.
it.
And
Yeah.
sounds
You know,
like
I'll tell you a story. I have a couple stories to tell you. So, story number one. One of our number one allies, also Catholic woman. Her name is Janice Laforme. I don't know if you know who she is. Her husband is Harry Laforme. He was the one and only Indigenous judge
He's
on the whatever circuit court. I don't know how it works exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Amazing. Um, she was out and about with her sister the other day and realized just how hard a time we're having. I opened my mailbox the other day, and in it was a package from her with yarn in it. Like, I'm a big knitter. She sent me yarn.
Oh,
She's like, you need something to brighten your day. And I
oh,
cried and I cried and
that's
I
incredible.
right? And this
Incredible.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the sad truth is that every Jewish family in this country is walking around with a list of countries in their pockets of where we're going to go, right? Like,
Yeah.
where can we go if the situation becomes
Ah,
so intolerable? And
got
it's not that we think that the government is going to revoke our citizenship or put restrictions on us, but it's if there are attacks in Jewish neighborhoods, like
you.
from
Yes.
some of these marauding bands of protesters,
Yeah.
or if it really does become increasingly difficult for our kids to get into universities, or our kids are having such a hard time at school, that would be the reason we leave. And every Jewish family right now is walking around with a list, right? Florida, Germany, England, Aruba, believe it or not. India is
Costa
another
Rica.
big place that people are looking.
Yeah.
And Costa Rica, yeah. Curacao. Somebody told me Curacao the other day. Apparently, it's beautiful. It is heartbreaking because I'm also an immigrant, and we came to Canada for a reason. And we love this country. We love this country. We chose this country. We put our roots down in this country. We worked on making sure we had our, we lost our accents. We are 100% Canadian.
Yeah.
There's nothing about me that
It's
is,
like Canadian
and
success
I,
stories.
yeah, like I was exactly like Revi. Every time I would fly away from Canada, and I lived outside of Canada for a number of years, but every time I would come home for a visit, and every time I would travel and then fly back to Canada, the minute I saw those Canadian flags and Canadian customs, I would cry. Like, I would tear up. I'd be like, I'm home, right? Like, to me, coming to Canada is home. I mean, certainly Israel also, but Canada's my home. And it would absolutely break my heart to leave Canada. But
Yeah.
I would be lying if I didn't say that my husband and I talk about it every single day.
I've been trying to convince my husband for the last year.
No, my husband and we are refining our list every single day. And
Yeah.
every single day, my husband is making sure that either his job can transfer to one of these countries or he can find something else in one of these countries every single day.
And that's the saddest thing, is that you have people who came here and their families thrived here, and they some of them live here for generations. My husband family, his mother's side has been here for several generations, and And to think that we would want to leave our country, that is a statement about Canada,
It
right?
really is.
That is a statement about
Yeah.
this country and about the people of this country, that they've allowed an entire community to feel like they're unwelcome in their country, in their home.
Mhm.
And that is beyond heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's a statement of the government and the political will to make the Jewish community feel safe and wanted in this country. And it is a statement of the silent majority that they haven't paid attention and they don't know what's going on and they're not informed and they don't seem to care, right?
Yeah.
And
So
and when
part
you're
of what we
looking
have
at
to
an
do
entire
is see
community,
that,
350,000 Jews that live in a country that are doctors and lawyers and teachers and bakers and Googlers and designers and contractors, all these people that have devoted their lives and put down roots and hired other people and worked for other people and really cared about the progress of this country are all willing as a collective group to just pack it up and go. That is a statement on the situation in our country, on our government,
Huge.
and on our people. And it's incumbent on them to make that change. It is not incumbent on us. It is not our responsibility to fix it. It is their responsibility to fix it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
what? So I think what we need to do, Lauren, and this your podcast is certainly a great way to do it. Is we need to turn some of the silent majority into allies.
Oh, I
We
would
need
love
to
to do
speak
it.
out.
The
Yeah.
thing is that I actually hadn't done an interview in a while, and one of my friends was saying, like, what are you kind of waiting for? Because I wanted to touch on this topic. And the topic itself, but of course, like the whole thing, right? I mean, I'm
Mhm.
emotionally taken by it. I can't imagine what it's like to be in your shoes. If I'm like this, and just sort of waiting for, like we were waiting for these current hostages to get, to come home and
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
alive or deceased. I mean, that's the other
Yeah.
part. If I feel that way, then I can't imagine what it's been like. I really can't.
We just live and breathe it. We live and breathe it every day. That's
Yeah.
all we think
Yeah.
about our whole life. It's taken over every aspect of our lives. We do Shabbat dinner at our family's homes every Friday night. And every time it's in our house, we sing the Israeli national anthem, before we sit down for dinner, along with our prayers. And that I didn't even know the Israeli national anthem until a year ago. I didn't
Right.
know it by
Right.
heart, and I do now.
So
So,
by the end of like the week, Friday, I know that you have Shabbat. I don't really
yeah,
know like the true importance of it, but has that changed tone for you?
it matters more.
It
It
matters
definitely
more.
matters more. We invite different people now. It used to be just our family. Now we invite our neighbors and our friends. We invite non-Jews to come and hang out with us on holidays. We had Passover not long ago. We invited some neighbors over that have become much closer friends due to their support mostly.
I think that's
Yeah.
And
wonderful.
yeah, and the wife is the first person that came to my home after October 7th to ask me if I was okay and to ask me to teach her about Jewish history and to explain what was really going on
Mhm.
because she's not Jewish and she didn't really understand. And so we really opened our doors to to introduce our culture to other people and to show
Yeah.
them that who we are so that they can have a true appreciation for it.
Right. So I got another story. Um, so I regularly have friends over for Shabbos and not a lot of non-Jewish friends. And my one non-Jewish friend, who's a regular attendee of my Shabbos, recently did the Jewish Heritage, not Jewish, did the Jewish Heritage presentation at the Apple Store because the Jewish
What
employees
store?
were a little at the Apple
Apple.
Store.
That's fantastic.
Apple works for Apple, and it's the reasons she did it and not the Jewish employees. The Jewish employees were a little too scared and nervous to do it because they didn't want to be singled out. So she went. She wrote herself a presentation. It was fantastic, and she's the one who did Jewish Heritage Month at the Apple Store. I mean, I love it. It like absolutely loved that she did that. I loved her presentation. It was fantastic, and
And I think
there
all
we
Jews,
go.
but I
And
think
that's
all Jews, it should be like a countrywide,
yeah,
a countrywide, I don't know what the word is right now, but like a program that everybody
yeah,
runs around and collects a whole bunch of non-Jewish people and brings them over for Shabbat dinner or a holiday dinner and shows them who we are and shows them what we care about and our perspective on things and our pain. Our
yeah.
pain is so visceral, so real, and so deep. And I think people need to see that pain. I think people see us as like this big bad Israeli monster, as opposed to these Jewish people that have experienced an extreme amount of trauma and pain in the last 12 months. And and I think we need to open our hearts up to others and really show them that and be vulnerable. And it's very hard for
Yeah.
us to be vulnerable because we're always on the offensive, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's
And
time for
and
us to really
Yeah.
open up.
I,
and and we run a risk, right? You always run the risk, and this has certainly happened to I mean, certainly me and I'm pretty sure Revi, where you run the risk of some of those non-Jewish friends just being like, you know what, this is a little too much for me. I'm out. Right? Like it was great when you were fun and all we did was go to Canada's Wonderland together, but now I'm out. This is too much. It's right. And I don't agree with everything and I'm out. And you run that risk. You run the risk. You invite people into your home of them saying, you know what? It's not for me.
But on
But,
the
but
flip side,
for
you
the
get
ones
people
that
that do
yeah,
support you. Yeah.
and you get people that you never would have imagined
Yeah.
would
yeah,
be
that's the
open
beauty.
and right that you
Yeah.
never would have imagined. People who if you were making assumptions about their background, you'd be like, oh, I don't think they're going to side with that. And then there they are. They're the first people to show up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
My
So
Irish neighbors,
yeah,
like it's unbelievable to
yeah,
me that before most or any really of my non-Jewish friends, this neighbor showed up at my door and knocked on my door and came in and cried with me. And I think that really needs to, if I could ask every Jewish person in this country to open their heart up to someone who's not Jewish and invite them in, I think that would be the single greatest thing that could happen in this country
yeah,
because it
yeah.
would really show people, who we are and what we believe in. And all what we call doing a mitzvah. We do so many mitzvahs. It's like to do something good for the
A good
community,
deed. It's
right?
a
Or
good
for
deed.
others.
Good deed.
And Jewish people are all about the good deeds. My family goes and feeds underprivileged people every winter at a church in the city. Not in a synagogue, but in a church
Mhm.
in the city, and we've done it every year for 23 years. And
Wow,
so,
that's incredible.
yeah, and so I really feel like people need to know who we are and what we stand for.
There is an when we were like off camera, I was talking about sort of like this sort of draw I have, like some sort of spiritual thing, because I personally am drawn to things like that uh, innately. And that's what I feel like we're missing in a sense in the world. Right? Because even though we're overshadowed by this darkness, perhaps on the underbelly is that there's some really deep rooted connections that are being made. And it sounds like that's what's happening, like for both of you, these unexpected, angels that are, coming to your homes and, sharing this
Mhm.
experience with you. And I mean, that's the real juice of life. And I feel that we've kind of disconnected ourselves a little bit, just as a society, like all over the globe. I'm going like, what's actually going on here? And so that's something that's really important to me. This is, also like why I wanted like, to do this today because we've just separated ourselves. And I think that this is you have such an old history, like 3,000 years of history. For some, maybe there's a light that we need to actually all learn about. Every human on this planet really needs to learn about from this little place on the planet.
Mm.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
always think things are,
A little place that's important to such a huge portion of the world's
The
population.
entire
it's
world.
huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. It's huge. Yeah.
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 Yeah. You know what? From your mouth to God's ears, as we
Yeah.
say, that we might be a light, as we say, a light unto the nations,
Yeah.
and that we can, through the teaching of our history and the teaching of our ethics and our sense of responsibility and our sense of duty, that maybe we can bring some of that connection back to the world. Please
Yeah.
God. I mean, we live in a very disconnected world. And you're absolutely right. And if we can perhaps, use our history and use our sense of peoplehood to create a sense of connection, I think it would be a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I've learned a lot too. I've learned a lot about what being human is. Even when I'm looking at the views of sort of different communities in Israel itself and how people are living, there was something about that I found really profound. Um, anyway, thank you. Thank you, Talia.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
The
Lauren. This
Canadian
has been
Women Against Anti-Semitism. You can find them on Instagram, Facebook. Are you on Twitter too?
yes,
Yes.
we're on
You're
Twitter.
everywhere. Okay.
CWAA _ national. That's our Twitter and
Yeah.
our Instagram. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Lauren,
you.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you
Yes,
for your
thank you.
allyship and your kindness for this interview today and helping us spread, I want to call it spread light. Let's spread some light and some joy in this world. Let's
Yeah,
start to do that. Let's
Yep.
absolutely.
focus on that for
Yeah.
2025.
Thank you for opening your heart and your minds to us. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you, and vice versa. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you've
Take care.
enjoyed today's discussion.
Thank you.
All right. Take
Okay.
care. Yeah.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.
Bye.